All right, welcome this evening. I'm going to call the Bylaw Review Committee to order. It's Wednesday, July 5th, 2023, and it is now 7:04 p.m. Tonight, we are going to start with the reorganization of the Bylaw Review Committee, and we will be voting on chair and secretary. I'm currently serving as chair, and Doug Shea is currently serving as a secretary.
Motion to reappoint both?
Second.
All right.
Can you do both at once, or do you have to?
Do it separately, probably would be easiest, actually.
Okay, motion to reappoint the chair as Ally.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Motion to reappoint the secretary, Doug.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 6-0.
I abstained.
You abstained, 5-0.
Did you abstain too?
I abstained.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yes. 5-0-0. We're getting back into the swing of things on our Bylaw Review Committee. I just wanted to do a quick overview for tonight. We have Joanne Mulligan, who joined us from Precinct 5. So the Bylaw Review Committee is a member from each of the precincts. Nancy Dane is Precinct 1. Allie Hamilton from Precinct 2. Pat Fasanello, who is not here this evening, for Precinct 3. Brad Hickey for Precinct 4. As I mentioned, Joanne Mulligan has joined us as Precinct 5. David Blau for Precinct 6, Doug Shea for Precinct 7, and Sue Shockett for Precinct 8. The purpose of this committee is to ensure that the administrative bylaws contain gender-neutral language, are in line with best and current practices, and as well as statutory references are up to date. The committee will seek guidance from various town leaders when needed and necessary. And many of our members are bringing a wealth of knowledge from other committees as well. So last fall, at the fall 2022 town meeting, we made our initial recommendations for the bylaws, and we had 3 bylaws that we needed to wrap up and continue. We had either asked for a continuation or we had not addressed them yet. So this summer, hopefully, we will have this all ready for the fall 2023 to finish the final 3 administrative bylaws, which is Chapter 5, Animal Control, Chapter 17, Building Committee, Permanent Building Committee, and Chapter 45, which is for Town Council. So,
Welcome, Joanne. Thank you.
thank you, Joanne, for joining us.
You guys have already done.
So we did not touch animal control during our initial review of the administrative bylaws, as we are now in an intermunicipal agreement with NORD, and that was still a fairly new process of that. We are now, I think, in year 3 of that agreement. But I think there's still some limitations of what we can do with this animal control bylaw. So anyone on the committee, do we want to jump right into that one, or would we like to start on some of the other bylaws?
I guess I'd say we start with 17, because I feel like that's
It wasn't much.
yeah, it was,
Okay.
but it's almost this is a brand new discussion.
Yes, it
Town
is.
council is a very involved discussion, and the permanent building committee may be a little easier. So it's hot. I'm going with the low.
No,
end.
that's fine with me. So Doug had sent out earlier what the recommendations were last year. We had Jeff Fisher, who was part of the committee at the time, who is a member of the Permanent Building Committee. I will also say that the Permanent Building Committee, we had questions last year about the number of members, and that committee is fully appointed right now. So there, 3 new members have recently been appointed to that committee, so it is a full board, or full committee, I should say, at this time. The real questions on this one were the amount and the involvement, and I think, Brad, you had looked up, I think it was the town of Wellesley at the time when we put this on hold last year, which I kind of printed up.
Yeah, I recall that. I was trying to find the email for that, and I can't find it. I don't know if
know,
I might have done that at the meeting while we were looking, but.
I think while we were looking at it, was kind of a quick delay because we were concerned about not having input from the, Permanent Building Committee on what was necessary. Last year, that committee only had 3 members. At this time, it is fully appointed, so it's a little bit different scenario. But we were really looking at the amount. What was that threshold for amount? What should be considered, whether it should also include not only municipal construction, but also recreational. Where were the boundaries of that? And that was a language we were kind of seeking to have a little bit more clarity on.
Yeah, and I recall too, there was some, at town meeting, there was some pushback about removing the other building committee that we got rid of, that we.
The advisory.
That we proposed to get rid of, and town meeting approved that. And so I don't know if this is an opportunity to kind of try to, make sure that people's concerns are covered in terms of this permanent building committee really having some juice, right? And having some oversight, as opposed to, the reason why we discontinued that other committee was that they hadn't done anything in years,
Yeah,
and nobody was involving them in anything, which defeats the purpose, right? And there was a lot of administrative aspect to that too, right? Where they had to get reports every year and go through review. That's too much for a volunteer committee, and our building staff and facility staff have that covered. But I think here, there is an opportunity to expand, not just to buildings, but to projects in general. But, I know Jeff was pushing for, I believe Jeff was pushing for a lower threshold. And I think that we had settled on a 2.5 million kind of draft, as we were last discussing it. My recollection for Jeff is he wanted that to be a lower threshold, so they could be involved in more things.
So the more involvement, so some other towns go as low as $500,000, which I think is too low.
Yeah.
There's not the need, because then that would require the building to be involved, the committee to be involved, if say like a roof repair or something like that. And that is kind of beyond, it's not the part of the scope that they would like to be, I think, participating in, and nor do they need to like micromanage kind of that project and oversee it. So we had talked about 2.5 million. Right now, the language is that it's municipal buildings. And some of the concerns were to include other such things as recreational and
Recreational facilities, I think.
recreational facilities, and what,
Was it playing fields as well? What- did it
recreational
get that
facilities,
specific?
buildings, and that's what I was kind of looking at, and I have like 5 different piles for, that one's animal control. Recreational facilities in the amount.
I
to be
have in the
covered.
minutes,
Yeah.
that, I thought I read in the minutes that Jeff wanted to increase,
That's what I was gonna say as well.
yeah, the
That's-
amount to
I
like
have that.
5 million.
Certainly possible I misremembered, yeah.
He, based on the minutes, which may or may not be correct,
I
hopefully
trust
they're
the minutes
correct.
more than I am getting.
It said that he wanted to go from 2.5 to 5 million. He did not feel at-large members were needed. And the idea of including the additional language to include recreational facilities was just to provide a broader scope, so everything was kind of under the purview of that committee.
Can I ask a question, though? There's already a recreational committee
Yes.
that also would vote on finances for the recreational department, right? No?
The
Okay.
finance committee, I'm sorry, the rec committee, don't we make a recommendation
Yeah,
to
we
Brendan?
We make a
It's-
recommendation, but the budget and all that stuff that all goes through FinCom and
Yeah.
select board and stuff, and then town meeting. So recreation committee is more about sounding board, back and forth on ideas for budgets and improvements. And, when we vote on things, it's more kind of policy-related
Procedure,
stuff than.
Okay, so it's
than
not the
funding.
facilities.
It's not
and
funding,
the-
yeah.
Okay, so there wouldn't be, that, my concern was that there might
Yep.
be like there'd be a loggerheads.
No, yeah, no, there should be no conflict there.
So I think it's really the threshold amount for funds, and also kind of the concept of opt-in or opt-out, to allow for that purview of the permanent building committee, if they deem it deem it appropriate. I shouldn't say necessary, but deem it appropriate.
As far as the value goes, I know, I think it was Glenn Maffey brought up the idea of doing a percentage rather than a standard dollar value, so it's something that, it's a value that could grow as costs get more expensive. And I kind of like that idea, but I don't know how to attach it to a project. You talk about the total cost of the contract, you talk about the total cost of the budget. It could get confusing depending on how technical you want to get. But I did like that idea. I think the $5 million threshold would be fine. for now.
I don't know what percentage.
Neither do I. I know,
It's percentage, would it be a percentage of like the prior year's budget or that year's budget?
Oh, it would
Because the
almost be
budgets change every year, right? So you want to make sure
I
that
would,
it's.
I would do it at the total cost. It's just, is it a $5 million contract and you do half of that? Do you do, $15 million contract, but then you include project costs, which be design rather than construction or something like that? And you might be talking 20 million rather than 15, so,
It seems like if you go with a set dollar amount, you can always revisit it and update it at a later date, whereas it seems like.
Yeah, and you could tie it to
Percentage.
inflation, and you could tie it to the inflation index and stuff like that, if you just don't want to have to rewrite the budget, the bylaws every year. It's $5 million as, as adjusted by the CPI or whatever going forward.
Oh, that's a
But-
good way of writing it, yeah.
But, I think the bigger issue, as you said, is like, how do we want to trigger this? How do we want to trigger their involvement? Is it automatic? Is it opt-in? Is it opt-out?
Well, here, and this is some language, and I think this is what you had found, and this, I believe, is from the town of Wellesley,
Yeah,
of
and I'm
how
looking
they
up more
have
right
it.
now as well.
The committee shall supervise the construction of all projects estimated cost more than 500,000, which, as we all agreed, is a little bit, too low, unless the committee and the entity proposing the project agree that the proposing entity shall supervise construction. So I feel like that language could lead itself to that opt-in or opt-out.
Can you read that again?
So the committee shall supervise the construction of all projects estimated to cost more than, they have 500,000, but we were saying 5 million, unless the committee and the entity proposing the project agree that the proposing entity shall supervise the construction.
So they shall do it unless they and the committee both agree that the committee will do it instead, the
Permanent
the
building.
agent, the department will supervise it instead.
And I think this really is more concerning things of recreational kind of buildings, those type of constructions, because a school building, municipal building, that is an automatic that the permanent building committee would be involved with that.
yeah, I definitely like the opt-in language. Jeff was specifically saying he didn't want to oversee typical maintenance window projects and things like that, and I agree.
I would that language that she read is opt-out language.
Yeah.
Which I think is better than opt-in. Because put it on them to say, we don't want to touch this. And then we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about, you didn't tell us about it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a better solution than giving them the automatic out,
And as with anything, this will go, any of our recommendations will, Doug has been drafting them, sending them out. We will send them to the town administrator. They will go before town council prior to anything being an article in the fall warrant. Permanent Building Committee can kind of send this along. Was that the gist of what we needed to deal with this?
Yeah, it was those two items.
Yeah, large portion.
There's the committee members, as Nancy said, the at-large. And I'm looking at the minutes, because did we ever get to sending this? I have a note here about the committee was comfortable adding recreational facilities to the chapter. And noted that the suggested KP law changes seem to cover everything else. So somehow,
I think, yeah, with that, I think one thing we should think about is exempting that, exempting any turf replacement projects. Because, there's specific funds that are being earmarked for that in recreation committee fees and in the budget. And so,
Well, the turf replacement doesn't come up to 5 million anyway, does it?
Not currently, right now, it shouldn't.
well, no, you're right, it's a 5 million, if we use the 5 million threshold, yeah, I'm just saying, in general, like, I think we'd want to make sure not to capture that they don't need to be involved in that. We're gonna buy new turf to put on the fields, and it has to be within a certain cycle. I don't know, maybe other people disagree.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I get concerned about exempting just the turf field replacement. You know, what happens when there's something else that needs to get replaced?
Something else, yeah, somewhere else.
But I agree with the idea that, but I guess that goes with the opt-out
But
language.
that, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, it would go with the opt-out.
And what about like pool? If we need a pool,
Yeah, that's, I
then
mean,
that's.
Well,
that's a big ticket item.
Recreational facilities,
Yeah,
so
the
they,
pool would definitely be,
And that did come up at town meeting in the spring, I
the
think.
pools
didn't
are
it?
in bad shape,
Yes.
and there's gonna be discussions about, probably at the very least, this one, and it would probably also include the building and other things as well, so I think that's,
And that would most likely hit the $5 million.
yeah, that would hit the threshold, and
Yeah.
we would want them involved in that, frankly.
Yeah.
And so maybe that, I don't know, should there be an opt-in, opt-out kind of combination? You know, like, you can opt out, but you can't opt out of certain things?
do we put the committee in trouble if we give them opt-out language? Does it seem like they don't want to touch it, you know? Is that a bad thing?
I mean,
to
that
do?
may be a question
It's a question for them, but.
for them, for Jim Johnson and for town council.
What if it was opt-out for standard maintenance, which would kind of include the turf, ability to opt out for maintenance on existing recreational fields and facilities? If it's just maintenance, not build? Does that make sense, or no?
It does. I almost think we're getting too deep into the weeds, and it should just be a simple
Opt-out.
opt-out.
Well, one thing, as we're talking here, I meant to look at this earlier, but so like Norwood's permanent building committee bylaw is like pretty robust. Like, they have all these things they have to do, and they have to supervise the projects, and there's all these definitions on it. So I agree that we don't need to go into that level of detail, but for the opt-out, you know, we could say, as an example, there's a $5 million threshold to trigger, or whatever the number is. But if you want to opt out, it's got to be, you know, within this range, right? So if it's 5 to 7 million, is just as an example, right? If you don't want to be involved in those projects, you can opt out. But any really big ticket item, you can't opt out. You have to be a part of it. So wherever the numbers fall, I think we could include that concept of, you can opt out in certain circumstances, and in other circumstances, you have to do what you're here to do.
And ours is, there are, like, reading over this one, and nor, if you said, reading over that is pretty comprehensive, and Wellesley is a 2 to 3, 2-page thing as well. Project means the design or construction of a building or structure described, and then it goes into the general law, which came up as a question because Public Works was asked last time as well. And permanent building, and there's a general law, chapter 30 on that. Substantial structure or service equipment such as municipal lights or municipal plant, housing authority, routine maintenance, or upkeep of building or other structure and service equipment which are performed on a regular basis. So those are the ones that a project is not, which is kind of that area that we were concerned about. It is not a public works. It is not service equipment. It is not housing authority. It is not routine maintenance and upkeep of the building. But I'm not sure if we really need to add all that.
Yeah, I mean, they have the
language in.
municipal light department, and they have the airport
Right.
that's talked about here. Like, so, yeah, you could start getting into,
The nitty-gritty of it.
right, and well, I mean, maybe that's worth doing. I mean, I think we're here to kind of evaluate how we think this will work, and we're gonna take some feedback, obviously, from the administration and stuff, but this permanent building committee hasn't really been doing much, and, now they're fully constituted.
Well, they're very involved in the middle school project.
No, I know, but I'm saying now that they're
Yeah.
fully constituted, it's
They
like,
are.
well, what, the bylaw right now is very, it's very loose. I mean, they shall be responsible for construction of new buildings, and like, that's it, that's all it says. That's so loose, in some ways that's good, and in some ways, it doesn't give them any direction on how to proceed with
That's a good point.
what to get involved in. So I could go either way in terms of how it should be, but, I don't think anybody can question that. I mean, the difference between our two little paragraphs here in the way that some of these other towns have a
Gotcha.
really robust permanent building committee thing. Not that we have to be like anybody else, but, you know,
Makes you wonder.
it may intentionally be broad, you
What are we
know, to
missing?
give them. Well, there's value in having it be, the permanent committee, building committee is responsible.
Yeah.
And then it's something that's up to them to figure out what they're gonna do, you know, and they, I mean, ultimately, they don't have, capital decision-making authority and things like that, so there's only so much they can do, right? But the level of supervision and the number of meetings and how many people they have to do and what records they're keeping, we don't have any of that in here, and so we're kind of deferring to their better judgment. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not, I don't know. You're only as good as the people involved when it comes to that stuff, right?
Well, I have a question. A permanent building committee is responsible for the construction of any additions, blah, blah, blah. They're not responsible for the construction. They're responsible for the oversight of the
Oversight
construction.
and management.
Oversight, right.
I mean, I can't see these 7 people out there building something.
No,
No, but they are very involved in the estimates. They are very, like, for the school, middle school, involved with, you know, as you seek out and got estimates from all the different developers and things like that. So they are very actively involved in those type of large municipal projects.
Well, then we had police and fire, they were involved in.
well, to Nancy's point, though, that language isn't very good.
No,
But I'm looking here at the thing, I can't tell from this, because I don't have the full bylaws, but was this ever changed, or is this how it's always been? I mean, I can see the membership section was amended in
Usually-
2019, but I don't see that the 17.1 was
so the
amended.
membership was, right, amended in 2019, and I think that is it.
So 17.1 has been written that way since however long, and it's written rather poorly and broadly.
And it doesn't say anything about soliciting quotes or how
Right.
many
Doesn't say
quotes or
anything,
anything
yeah.
like
So
that.
this is, again, language from another town, additional duties, a committee shall be responsible for financial estimates, the design of every project estimated to be more than, you know, whatever that threshold we put there, and the construction of those projects which funds are appropriated to the committee. Although that language, I do not think
Yeah, no, I
is
mean,
right.
I think there's a lot of work we need to do on this. I think what we need to come up with is a kind of, do we want to try to keep it loose and broad, or do we want to really get into the meat and potatoes like some of these other towns do? And with the next meeting or so, we can talk, we can do a little research and talk through some of those options, but we have to pick a direction.
Right.
And kind of go with that, because if we're rewriting this thing from jump, it's a lot. And there's gonna be a lot of input. So, you know,
And I would-
but if we think it's right, then we should do it, or suggest it anyway.
Wouldn't the town administrator be responsible for actually putting something out to bid and getting the quotes in and making sure there were
Well,
quotes?
that,
And then the building committee would be reviewing the quotes that were,
it is kind of a process of that set, because that, when there's a large, so say the middle school, there's also the middle school building committee, which has to have a permanent building committee member on it, and, or two, can be more. So they are certainly very involved in every aspect as you get the estimates, as you're putting it out to bid, bringing those recommendations, but they're then part of, within a larger committee as well.
What you're asking, I think, Sue, is, do they start it?
right, because, so, I mean, if we're saying what the responsibilities are,
Yeah.
I guess you'd want to be as detailed as possible with exactly what they should be doing versus what the town administrator would be doing and where the handoff occurs.
Or at least maybe put in a subpart of general duties, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we have anywhere.
We don't have
don't have
any, we don't have
anything.
anything at all. So we don't know what anything means.
Which I think, if you're adding general duties, you're also adding in what is the scope that you view this committee should have or should follow through on.
Right.
And, I mean, to write this up, should we be getting input from people who are actually on this building committee? Because
I would think so.
what are you willing to do for the town here?
Instead of us telling them.
And
what
telling them,
you-
yeah, yeah,
this is what you
yeah.
are
I'm
going
picturing
to
this
do.
being delivered, and being like, oh no, that's not what I signed up for.
Well, but ultimately, we're making recommendations and everybody else has to approve it.
Right.
FinCom, Select Board, Town Meeting. So, yeah, we need input from people because if they don't, my view may be different than some other people. I think we should do what we think is right, but if really everybody's gonna say, we don't want anything to do with that, we shouldn't waste our time. I think. We could put on a good face, but you say, we approached them about rewriting it to look like Norwood's and Wellesley's, and they said, nobody wants that. We could put that on the record and let that be the result,
Don't
because
want-
if it's gonna get voted down, and people are gonna be up in arms about it, not to say it's not worth trying, but this isn't like a,
It seems like more definition is definitely needed, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Am I reading this correctly? General references that this was adopted or amended in 1995?
I cut and pasted the bylaw into the minutes that,
Yeah, but I'm looking at the E code 360.
oh, that's updated all the time, so.
it may be.
It could
But
be,
it says, editor's note, this bylaw was adopted or amended at 4/3/1995, annual town meeting, Article 42,
4-3,
1995.
which seems
That doesn't,
seem odd because in our charter, it lists town meeting to occur
in May, you mean?
in May.
Yes, so you're right. But
So-
1995 is a different question.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but I'm just thinking our charter specifically states when town meeting can
I'm
be held.
sorry, I always find these weird little things.
No, I think it's good. All right, so what, but then,
Specific about the composition of the committee,
Yeah.
lawyer, architect, but it's not too specific about
Anything else,
What
what they
their
really
duties.
No.
do,
right.
what the scope is.
I think it would be, okay, my intention would be to add kind of 1, 2, 3. Very basic.
I like that idea.
And then the opt-in language. I think those would be 2 starting points, but again, I think an action item is to reach out to the longstanding permanent building committee members who have been through municipal projects or currently involved in municipal projects and see if that,
And that would be,
Committee.
and so, yeah. I think that's,
because the 3 newly appointed may not.
right, and
Really?
it shouldn't be self-directed anyway. They should say, well, here's what I want to do, and okay, we'll let you do that. Like, it should, it should be more about what's the work actually being done on the ground by that committee, and how can we help define that and clarify that going forward.
And-
So, if
and
they're
that's-
not doing all of these things, then
Yeah.
we shouldn't put that in. And if they are doing other things that we want to put in, then we should know that.
And the new people who got appointed, I think are pretty strong, and it'd be good for them to have a better handle than just kind of being told, this is the way we always did it.
All right, so I'll put an action item to reach out to a permanent building committee member, longstanding member, as well as town administrator Jim Johnson. The direction that we're seeking is to put general duties such as, 1, 2, 3 general duties, as well as an opt-in language with the threshold of 5 million, kind of the scope that we're looking for this general bylaw.
Can I ask clarification about the opt-in and the opt-out language? You were very specific about using the opt-in language. I liked Brad's opt-out
Out
language.
language.
I agree. I
So
like
how-
everything goes to them and then they can opt out.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before, if they're gonna opt out, put it on them. Don't put
And
it
I'm
on
just-
somebody else to tell them that they have to be involved.
I guess I'm just looking for, like, to me, that makes sense. I wasn't sure what your definition of opt-in.
Well,
Like, they
and
get
that's.
to choose what they
I-
want versus
well-
everything's on your plate until you
And
say
that's, I
no.
think, where the permanent building wanted the option to opt in or opt out.
Okay.
And I think we can look at that language and see, but we're stating it as a $5 million threshold.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that still seems very high, but
You think it seems high?
I do.
You think it should be more like
I-
a 2.5 million, 3 million?
Yeah, I mean, the Northern one is 1.5, but, I just think, if we think about doing this work with this committee and putting this stuff together, but how much stuff are they gonna be involved in? it's a $5 million threshold. Like, they want the ability to touch all these other things, but you put a $5 million threshold there, like, what are you building for less than $5 million?
Yeah, we were originally suggesting 2.5. Jeff seemed to want to up
I'm
it
saying,
to 5.
but what I'm saying, practically speaking, what are we spending less than $5 million on? That they would have any role in whatsoever? Yeah, they're gonna be involved in schools and big municipal building projects. What else would they be involved in? And if we wanna expand their role, then they should, to capture more things, you have to lower the number, not raise the number, right? I mean, otherwise, we're not spending $5 million on a field anytime soon. We're not spending $5 million on a cemetery or a pond or something else. Like, what are we, the only thing is the pool and maybe another building. And if it's a school, then there's gonna be a involvement that's mandated by law anyway.
Right.
So maybe we just need to get an understanding from them of what they really, of the breadth of what they want to be involved in, because I don't, maybe I'm just seeing it differently, but I think the threshold being high means there's gonna be so much stuff that they don't get to touch.
Yep.
And so that's maybe, maybe that's where the opt-in stuff came from. It's like, well, if we want to be involved in it, we should be allowed to. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I agree. If it's 2.5, then, and they have an opt-out, and they're like, no, this isn't something we need to deal with. Not enough money.
I was just reviewing this as well. So the first part was more of the opt-out. The second part that language that is kind of just an example, is the proposing entity shall supervise the construction of all project estimated costs less than, say 5 million, whatever threshold we put, unless the committee and the entity proposing the project agree, the committee shall supervise the construction. So it is an A and a B. So the first language, the committee shall supervise the construction of all projects estimated to cost more than, say 5 million, unless the committee and the entity proposing the project agree the proposing entity shall supervise. B is then the proposing entity shall supervise the construction of all projects estimated cost less than, say 5 million, unless the committee and the entity proposing the project agree the committee shall supervise the construction.
So the only thing I would disagree with there is that I would not give the entity the right
Jurisdiction.
to veto the committee wanting to be involved. If we use that language, you're saying 5 million, you have to be involved unless you don't want to be. Less than 5 million, you can be involved. But if we put that hurdle that somebody else has to let you be involved, then
Right.
that defeats the
That's a
purpose.
good point.
Right, I think but I like that idea, just both ends of that, whatever that number is, the high-low, they can be involved if they so choose.
And I think we could even simplify that language.
Oh, yeah.
This was supposed to be the low-hanging fruit.
I know, this was, and this is what, when you,
first.
this is why we put it on pause though, because as we were doing our final meeting and needing to do our final votes for recommendation, more questions came up and we just thought we're still not there yet. The discussion still needs to continue.
And we still have to agree on a dollar amount, because you're saying Norwood and Wellesley both had 1.5,
500,000.
and we're at 2.5 already.
Well,
Well, there's technically no value in the bylaw.
in the bylaw, there's
We're
currently no
adding-
value.
Yeah, we're proposing to add the value. Right now, it's written as they're involved in everything. No threshold at all. Well, I think we're trying to put that concept in of some things you can be involved in, some things you can't. My view is that it should be lower, not 5 million, but, that's, the larger group gets to.
So the dollar amounts that we were talking about with Jeff, those are our dollar amounts, so weren't
Those
Yeah.
those were
actually
ours.
anything.
yeah.
Okay.
That was from our discussions last year. And Jeff, as a member, not to speak for him, it was really concerning the recreational and things like that, that there was other projects going on that they were not involved in.
Yeah, I mean, the pool's a good example, like, they should be involved in that. That's a huge project if it's gonna come down the pipe. A lot of dollars, a lot of complex features and aspects of what it's gonna mean for other facilities in town and stuff, like, they should be involved in that. And they I mean, technically, they wouldn't be if we were just doing the pool and not the pool house, right?
Not the building on the facility.
Yeah.
So I think keeping the 2.5 would make sense, or well, adding in the 2.5 would make sense, and I agree it should be lower than the 5 million, especially if we're having the opt-in, opt-out. Because you don't really know, it's hard to predict exactly what they would want to be doing and how much it's gonna cost.
Well, right, and you get, if you have the opt-in, opt-out from that, from Wellesley, you know, as an example, right, so that gives them everything they need. So you're automatically in unless you don't wanna be, right, and then certain things you can't get out of, and certain things you can get out of, and that's okay, right, so, you know, the threshold shouldn't really matter in that respect. If you could put $100,000, they could still have that same right,
Right.
Yeah.
you know?
All right, so we have a few action items for people to reach out to, and then I can follow back up.
If you want me to, I could start like putting language together based on what we've talked about, I can do that.
Okay. Start drafting it. The other bylaw that we had started that we paused on was town council. Are we ready to move on, do we feel? It's the town council, chapter 45. Kind of reviewing what we had talked through, one of the items that we were unsure of is town council's opinion on the changes and the feedback. I have tried to track down any feedback, and I don't know if this article ever really went to town council for review. Does anyone else have recollection?
My guess is because we pulled it, that it didn't, because they were getting busy from getting ready for town meeting, that I think we just said, you don't have to look at this one.
Right, my recollection was we got it like the night before we met, and we didn't have time to get an opinion from town council, so.
Review. Okay, because I was not able, that's what I thought, because I was not able to find anything that there was concrete review of it with recommendations. And most of the chapters that we sent along to town meeting, we adopted the KP Law's recommendations along with ours. Town council, the one I was kind of looking at this again, kind of that 1, 2, 3, what are we trying to do with this? I think when we were looking at it prior to, we were looking to clarify definitions. We had some discussions about, do we have boards, do we have commissions, do we have committees within the town? What constitute a town officer? And then requests for town council, kind of who has the right or scope within their board or department head to seek that out. And what kind of procedure should that be followed? Should it go through the town administrator? Should it be department heads? Definition of town officers, and I think we even said RTMs are considered a town officer as an elected official as well. So I think those were kind of the points we were looking for. Does anyone else have anything to add in?
Yeah, I do remember all that. I think part of what was, they were trying to clean this up a little bit, and I don't know that that occurred, because it looks really busy. But that, I do remember substantial conversations about who could go to town council.
Yeah, and I think that when we tie the definition to town officer, that's in the general laws, as you said, it's elected officials and all other town officers shall be appointed by the selectmen unless other provision is made by law or vote of the town. That's Mass General laws, right? So town officers are any appointed committees and commissions and all of those kind of things too, which I don't think it's a problem having people want to request an opinion of town council if something's coming before their board. But it should be, a town officer can request that their board or commission or whatever seek. And so I think when we tried to draft this, it was like, it was under the kind of umbrella of requested by a board or committee because an officer asked them to request it, not anybody on their own could just call town council and be like, I need you to write up an opinion about this issue. That's not what we're using town council for, and they wouldn't do it anyway, by the way.
They would not do it.
They would not answer the phone for every RTM that picks up the phone. I know that for a fact.
Do you know who I am? I'm precinct 1.
Especially those who identify themselves only by their last name.
So this is where it did get kind of a little bit messy, and I kind of going back to what do we want out of this review for this particular chapter? Do we want to include additional language for town officer, the meaning of a town officer? I think it was to help, cleaning up was to make it more consistent, the language more consistent throughout.
I mean, it seems like to streamline it, the chair of a committee should be going to the town administrator to request correspondence with town council, I would think. Because I don't even think you want any committee member to be requesting it, right? You want the consensus, and then the chair of the committee makes unless there's some kind of a problem with the chair of the committee, in which case it's at the discretion of the town administrator, ultimately, I would.
Yeah, so it's hard to read this with the red line, but if you look at the clean version, but it should be the chair of the, like I guess a board or committee could vote to request. See, then if we start getting into like how all these boards should operate, I don't really know that that's our purview, right? But as an example, if there are 4 members of the rec committee that want somebody to reach out to town council and there are 2 that don't, the rec committee should reach out to town council for that question, right? But on the flip side, if there's 2 people that want to reach out and 4 people that don't, do we want to hamstring the person that wants to reach out because they might have an issue that they're being silenced on by other people in their committee? And so that's where like the select board part comes in. You go to the select board and go, nobody's listening to me, and can we have council look at this? I don't know. You don't want to give every person the right to just bang on the door of town council whenever they want, but for legitimate questions with disagreements at the committee level, those issues would get, under kind of the way we have it, those issues would get permanently buried. Right? They would never get presented to town council if the committee didn't approve it, or the chair didn't approve it. I don't know that we want that, do we?
I don't know. And what's a little bit right now as it's currently written is related to town affairs which may be required of counts by vote of the town of any board, commission, or committee we added or committee because we do, but we have commissions because,
Yeah.
but then we got into like housing authority, that's an elected board and things like that. And I think that was part of our discussion. Do we add in more language there? Or by department heads, which was added in, language that was added in specifically was department heads. Or town officers. Town officers was already in this bylaw. What we were looking was to clarify what shall the meaning of town officer be. And I think when you put in the meaning and the definition, and then it really opens this up even further.
But if you don't define it, then what the heck is a town officer?
Exactly, but do we keep town officer in then?
Yeah, well, I think that's what I was just raising is like a town officer, if their collective group agrees to let them that opinion and the select board. Yeah, the problem is I don't want to give the select board the power of the purse to like not engage town council if people have legitimate inquiries, right? And the select board says no, say, well, yeah, but now we're powerless to do our job as elected officials in some cases because you won't let us talk to town council. That's not fair, right? And so, I don't know, it's a difficult thing to figure out.
Well, what if the elected or appointed officials had to confer with their committees, vote in the committee, have the chairman of the committee request to bring whatever the issue is to town council. If the chairman, either the committee votes against bringing it to town council, or for some reason the chairman doesn't agree and doesn't want to bring it, at that point, could there be an appeals process where they would go to the select board if their own committee votes against bringing it to town council? Or is that just going to complicate things and have infighting with committees going to the select board for?
Well, it's not part of the select board, so then I think you're also looking at changing the purview of the select board bylaws or the charter that pertain to what are the obligations of the select board.
Well, it's the select board or its authorized agent, which would be Jim.
Authorized agent, yes. So the other thought I was just thinking, or by department heads or town officers, could we add a language there as members of elected or appointed committees, boards, and kind of reintroduce that language again? So that it's not a singular town officer that you're putting in, but a town officer as part of a larger body.
But still, you want the committee really, ideally, to agree that the issue warrants an opinion by town council.
Well, and that's part of it, though. Town affairs which may be required of council by vote of the town, of any board, committee of the town, department heads, but it says, or town officers.
Okay, so it does say by vote of, though.
In the earlier language of that.
Oh, yeah, I see it now.
And also
But I
Chuck's
think
vote.
I
that
don't think this says RTMs, by the way.
the town officer, well, that would be a good thing.
Town clerk, town treasurer, collectors, selectmen, assessors, auditors, highway surveyors, sewer commissioners, tree wardens, constables, school committee, assessors, board of health. All others are appointed by the selectmen unless provision is made by law or vote of the town. So
Where are you reading that?
this is Mass General Law 41. That was the definition we tried to
41
point to.
section 1.
My institutional memory is hazy about these conversations
I
earlier. but
know.
We may, I mean, you can exempt different, you could say as defined in chapter 41, section 1, but for purposes of clarification shall not include representative town meeting members or,
But it wasn't a part of that.
right, but you say, but you just, you can make it clear and, you know, for purposes of clarity, this does not include RTMs or X, Y, and Z, if you wanted to do that, but the larger point, to your point, Sue, in my view, and I feel the same way, like, how many conflicts do we want to create or solve for here? And I'm not sure we can really govern the inner workings and policies of all these different committees either. I mean, ultimately, I think if there's a member of an elected or appointed committee, specifically the elected committee, appointed is different, I guess, but not really. If there's a member of an elected person who wants to seek legal counsel for an issue they think is important to the town, and the rest of their committee can basically tell them no. I don't know, is that good?
I don't know, I know.
I mean, other than somebody just being difficult for the sake of being difficult, if there are legitimate grievances and small town politics, and it is what it is, and you're like, well, now you're like this whistleblower or whatever, where you're like this, like, they're keeping, not that they couldn't go get an opinion from somebody else, I suppose the town wouldn't pay for it, but I don't know. It's hard to judge all these different scenarios. So how do you draft a bylaw that encompasses that?
I don't know that we need to. I mean, if somebody wanted to, they could always go before the select board, an open meeting, raise the issues, and force it that way. In my experience, there hasn't been too many times where the chair has said no to requesting an additional opinion or requesting an opinion, so I don't know that it's really that big of a deal. I do agree that there's gotta be some protection in place, but that's where somebody going in front of the select board and the public on TV, where it
Yep.
kind of is the fail-safe for me, but.
Yeah, that's fair. I think if we put it at the committee or board level, the board, it can't be Sue wants to go talk to town council, we all have to agree. That the bylaw committee has a question that we want to ask town council, then we can present it to Jim and whoever and say, can we ask them this question? But it shouldn't just be Sue on her own.
Right, and I think
Asking
there's
town
gotta be
council.
some way, either an RTM should approach a committee where the question would be supervised, or, but like, you can't have, how many hundreds of RTMs do we have calling up with?
But I think it's helpful, when we talked about it, to add the department heads in here, because I do remember looking at this list, and you're just like, well, you know, we have assessors and we have, you know, elected officials there, but we also have other people that are working in those departments, in the building department and the facilities department and things like that, and if they have questions about things, they should be able to ask somebody to ask the lawyers to give them some guidance, right? And they're not part of a committee or a board, how do they get that? So they can bring it to a committee or a board and say, can you please ask the lawyers if we can do this before we do this? I think they should have that right, as well as, especially police and fire, right?
They
I
would
mean,
likely just bring it directly to the town administrator.
Right,
Yeah.
but right now, they don't have that, in theory, the way it's written currently, without any of our edits, the police chief or the fire chief wouldn't have that authority to request it. Not that they haven't anyway, but
That's right.
technically not in there. So I think they should have that, you know, as well as all the other department heads.
I think, and we did add the department heads, and I think kind of reading over these recommendations, it looks messy, but not much was actually changed. It was just clarity of language, some of it further down.
I do agree that a lot of it was just, I thought it was clarifications, but
Yeah.
as Brad pointed out, with all the track changes, it makes it hard to read.
Yeah, but I do think if we look at the third paragraph down, I think I'm wondering if that's an advisable paragraph to include. It kind of goes to what we were talking about before. Maybe it's more, maybe it could be specified a little bit more as about the duty, you know, it says duties, but it's not what can we do as a select board, it's what am I allowed to do here? I have an ethical question, or I have a conflicts question, or something. You want people to be able to reach out to town council. I don't know if we could just make that clearer there. On any subject concerning the duties incumbent on said officer. It's pretty broad.
I know, and I'm actually kind of surprised that it's so broad there.
Could we say maybe
You don't
under
use
the,
it, but you don't
under
want
the
it.
guidance of, or under the direction of the town administrator or the select board?
This third paragraph almost kind of contradicts what we're trying to accomplish in the first one.
Well, I think what it's trying to get at is what am I allowed to do, or what am I forbidden from doing as an office holder or a committee member, right? But not, you know, can we build on these wetlands, right? That's not what we're asking. It's like, what am I supposed to do here if I know Ally did something really bad? How am I supposed to handle that? You should be able to talk to town council about that, but there should be a vessel other than individual people having to there should be supervision of it, at least knowledge by the town administrator that somebody is doing that.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have to give permission, they should know that you're doing it. I need to talk to town council. We had an issue at the rec committee meeting. I need to talk to town council. And,
Well, because I think even from the town council's perspective, they don't want calls coming in from everybody.
Oh, of
and
course.
And they're not gonna know who is a crackpot and who is, you know, would have a legitimate gripe to discuss. So there's gotta be some oversight with people communicating one-on-one with town council.
yeah, so it's some sort of coordination language in that paragraph, I think, just
Right.
through even, yeah, man, I don't think we want to give the town administrator
Final
Ultimate authority.
the ultimate authority to say no, but we can say, Jim, you've got to call Lauren and let her talk to Joanne. She has questions and she needs to talk to town council. And if somebody else has to be in the room, then we could talk about that. But, yeah, I think just somebody has to coordinate it, not Lauren getting a phone call from
Right.
whoever wants to call.
And I thought that's how this was kind of written,
Okay.
that you've got to get written permission to speak to town council, either from the board or its authorized agent.
Which is the paragraph prior.
And so to me, that's,
Well, the paragraph prior talks about a written opinion. This one just says legal advice. So they are different in that sense. One is,
Both billable.
Yeah.
but one is the requested by the board and committee for somebody to put together a written document that's gonna be on record and it's gonna be, you know, it takes some time to put together. That, okay, you want permission for that. Number one, it's gonna cost, and number two, we need to make sure how we're directing them. Versus legal advice is, I need a phone call with, because we need to understand what the conflict of interest thing is and whether Doug needs to recuse himself from this vote. You should be able to go and get that legal advice without a written opinion.
I agree. And so
Yeah.
to me, it's taking that third paragraph and adding something similar to, you know, advice from the select board or its authorized agent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, we put that in a recommendation. Any of these bylaws, you know, the final point will be bringing it to town meeting. So being able to describe to and explain to finance committee,
Why are we
select
doing
board,
this?
why
Yeah.
are we doing this? What is the purpose behind it? We really don't want to get away from that kind of mission, because otherwise it's not going to go over well at town meeting when we're
Right, and so
presenting it.
that- Yeah, we're trying to clarify this role in paragraph one and this role in paragraph two and this, you know, who's gonna coordinate this in paragraph three if it's not a written opinion. Right, we can explain why we wanna do all these different things. Right, Joanne?
Exactly.
All right, but I don't think we had that much work to do on this end.
No, it
It
just
just
looks
looks
like a lot.
messy. It looks, there's a lot of red, it looks messy,
If you
but
look
I
at
don't
the
think,
clean version, it's not.
it's not
It
as.
reads, it reads reasonably clearly, so we just gotta maybe clean it up a little bit more.
Okay. So our intentions in the kind of the beginning were to add committee, department head, and add a definition for a town officer. And then it was to clarify, I think this is really just language cleanup. I don't think it's really a change from what was put in.
Can I say one other thing?
Go for
I
it.
think, I'm not sure that we would be hurt by just taking references to town officers out. If we're gonna clarify that it's committee and board and commissions and such, and department heads, then, you know, do you need that town officer definition if you're worried about that being too broad? I think it's okay to include it, but there's a few other reference to it here where it needs to be clarified.
The town officer piece?
Yeah. Like the third paragraph we just talked about, but the fourth paragraph. Show when required by town officers, well, not just town officers, right? It's other people too, you know, the administrator, those kind of things, like who, or is it all town officers get to authorize them to prosecute lawsuits? I don't think that's what we wanna do, right? The select board has the power of the purse there when it comes to representing the town. Do we want every town officer to authorize town council to prosecute a lawsuit? I don't think that makes sense.
And we had really not put any changes
Right.
into that fourth paragraph, except
It's a fresh-
changing from council to
It's a
be
fresh
town,
look.
town council,
Yeah.
and capacity to capacities, so.
We could just, I mean, I think if we get rid of that just the,
When required by town.
yeah, just get rid of
officers.
that hypothetical, not and just, town council shall prosecute any suits ordered to be brought by the town, and shall appear, like, that's really what you're giving them authority to do that.
In their
in the
official
bylaws.
capacity,
Yeah.
it says right there.
Like, the last paragraph
Should be on
says
behalf.
it, the last paragraph says it the same way, it doesn't say it has to be authorized by town officers, it says whenever services are required, so.
So are you thinking you should take out paragraph 4 completely?
No, just take out
Just
the,
take out
When
when required
required
by
by
town
town
officers?
officers.
yeah. Because that, again, that paragraph talks about prosecuting suits ordered to be brought by the town, and then the other one, the next paragraph is other suits that the town gets brought into, or the townspeople get brought into, so
Okay,
it's covering both bases there, I think.
And that should say on behalf of the town, not in behalf. The very, very end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who are the referees?
What's
who are the referees?
Yeah,
Second to last sentence.
before any board or referees or commissioners.
That's a good one.
That's new language for me, and this kind of a document.
Before any tribunal.
Why is that even
Brad,
in
do you
there?
have an
Any
answer for
board or
referees?
commissioners or
They have
referees?
no,
But that's not, it's not something we've added, that's what is currently
Yeah,
included
right,
in
yeah.
the town council bylaw.
But I'm just wondering why it's in there. I've never heard that terminology before in this context.
I have no idea.
Is that
Referees
like
or.
an arbiter or something?
That's what I would think more in. We can put that when we put our questions.
All right,
Oh,
well,
that's-
read.
yeah.
Because is that, well, the purposes of the current language, if this is not, if this, you know, when,
Well, this is, yeah,
this
this
hasn't been
one,
adapted since when, so if referees is not current
Well,
language of how we would
it's
have.
possible there's some state agency that calls their people referees.
I mean, were mediators at one point called referees, I wonder? That kind of makes sense,
Well,
but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if we look at that, if we wanted to do a breakdown of every board and agency in the state of Massachusetts, in the Commonwealth, it would be, does board or commissioners cover all of them? Probably not.
Well-
So I don't, like, you're basically saying, any tribunal or agency in the state, we could maybe clarify that language. Referee is probably somewhere in some, wildlife division, who knows, right? Somewhere.
We'll check in on that current language there, because that just may not be something that is utilized. I don't know when this bylaw was last reviewed. I think it was quite a while ago.
Gotta have something to do with soccer.
No.
I don't know about that.
Soccer can be intense. All right, the last one, do we have anything more to add on that? I kind of have the action items for a few things, maybe even taking out the town officers completely.
No.
Even draft. Okay, so do we want to begin discussion on animal control a little bit?
Love to.
All right. So animal control, Nancy, did you I printed out copies. Printer was full of ink and actually working, so here's the good thing. So I have done a little bit not work on animal control, but kind of a little bit of research on animal control. So looking at the current bylaw, which is Chapter 5, Animal Control Officer, but also looking at the charter and the select board, as well as animal control officer job description and where that is, because again, we're looking for current language. And as we know, in current practice, the role has slightly changed. So I don't know how far we can get on the discussion with this, because I do have a question of what our preview of what we'll be able to do, because in the charter, there is language that the select board shall appoint the animal control officer, which is not really how the current practices because we are in an intermunicipal agreement at this time with the town.
right now.
Right. So, but also in that language is in both, and it's consistent with the bylaw and the charter, but rewriting a charter is not something in our purview. It is not something that's easily done, and it's very costly. So I'm not sure how much we can adjust the bylaw if it then contradicts with the charter.
Well, I guess it sort of depends too on how, right, the exact definition of the word appoint. I mean, if appoint can be used as reaching an agreement with the other towns, I mean, they sort of have appointed, if they've agreed with the other towns, it's just not.
Well, in the language, so if you're looking in that kind of that first main paragraph under that section 5.1, the last line, town from time to time employ, including animal control officers from neighboring towns. And that is also the language that is within the, under the select board.
Do we know when that was included?
This is old.
So,
I mean, I'm sure we have a history somewhere, but when it says this was amended in 2005, 2018, 2019, I'm wondering what parts were amended.
I'm not sure what parts were amended, but it was 2019 was the last Article
Right.
20.
I'm just wondering, that line about neighboring towns, I'm wondering if that has always been in there, or is that something that was contemplated fairly I don't remember doing it at town meeting, but
It might not be, it might have been when we were forming like an agreement. And it was
We've been-
going more to police, but in the past, did we share before it went to police?
We had to vote on having the animal control go under the purview of the police. That was recent. That was probably what was in 2019.
Before that, did we share with other towns?
No, we had.
I didn't
we
think
had-
so.
We had the guy, then he retired, and we had the other guy who quit, so then we brought the last guy back part-time.
do we have the book somewhere? Do they have, are the bylaws at town hall, do we have like printed versions from years gone by? Does somebody have
I'm
them?
sure we can find.
I'm just curious, I don't think it's not that, I'd be curious, but more because I think that gives us gives the authority that we need, but that doesn't mean we don't have to take power away from the select board to talk about what the animal control officer can and can't do. They're hiring them.
But it's really under the purview of the police now.
Right.
And that's what the language that wasn't changed, but it's not just as easy to say these administrative bylaws, this first section, which is our purview to look at. It will then, changes could contradict other areas.
Right, but if town meeting is the one that gets to change the bylaws, right? So if town meeting decides that we want to change every single thing about this chapter, shouldn't we be able to?
But are you saying that it would contradict with the charter?
What would it
That's my
contradict?
question, because this language is also,
What does the charter say?
Very vague, it just says the police chief can determine what the job is.
So that language was when we put the animal control officer under the police. I think the 2019 was the selectmen to select board.
probably.
Yes, you're
So
right.
I think
You're right. But,
this-
I mean, and all we really did was move the department into the police station. Really,
The select board is still over the police too,
yes.
so the police don't act independently.
And so that was my question that I don't have an answer for this evening. I think there is still, because it lists town may from time to time employ, including animal control officers from neighboring towns. That kind of alludes to an intermunicipal agreement in a broad sense of the language.
And it's the select board that would coordinate the intermunicipal agreement, not the police, right?
Right, but there's the oversight of being under the select board, the appointment,
Well, it says.
the hearings. I think, is the hearings part of the second part? hold and conduct hearings preliminary to select board members. And the select board may select a commercial kennel facility with the town. Or use animal control. So some of the current practices, I think I know I still have questions on of what it falls under more so.
I'm trying to find it here in the charter. Where in the charter is the animal control?
But I have, you do select board and look
Yeah.
at powers and duties. Is that part of it? I looked it up probably 2 weeks ago at least.
There's a lot of, let's see.
You look kind of under that bylaws, but it's more than one area.
That's the bylaw, though.
That's the bylaw area, but I think it's also under
Yeah,
the
right.
charter for select board as well.
Yeah, all right, let me look. I'm looking at powers and duties now, I'm just trying to see.
But this committee is only set to make the recommendations for the bylaws for that first section. So this is where I notice that it's in two sections, and I think we need clarification of if we change it here.
Unless this isn't updated.
Personally, I think we need to address the dog licensing. Why don't cats need licenses?
Window what?
Why don't cats need licenses? Why am I paying for my dog every year? And I'm one of the only suckers that actually goes and gets the license for him, I think.
My dog's too big, I have to go. I'm there.
I don't see it. Maybe I'm just blind. I don't see it. I'm looking up.
I looked up animal control in the charter and I found one reference.
What did you find it under?
Powers of appointment,
Where is it?
page 17 of 39. And interestingly enough, it says selectmen, so when was the last time the charter was updated? So, like, we're already working with out-of-date language, so
Right.
You're saying it's under powers of appointment?
that's the only reference I found to animal control.
Yeah, and I don't even see that in here.
It's under
Powers and duties?
section 4, subsection A, I guess.
Okay, you're right. I got it. Unless otherwise governed by the general laws. They shall have the power to appoint persons to town office, including constables, animal control officer, veterans, emergency management, and subject to town bylaws. Okay. Why was that not showing up in my?
So I think that's just a question that I think we should consider a little bit. Our area is just this first section, administrative bylaws. Changes that we make here then will be contradicted to other areas,
Potentially.
potentially.
Well, I think the larger question is what is our charge with respect to the animal control officer? Like, what do we want to? We can still punt on this if we want to because of the the agreement with Norwood, but ultimately, what do we think?
I think the only changes really that I was hoping to make out of it was to make it so that it's under current practice. And I'm
That
not
it's
sure
under what?
that it would be standard with what's current practice. Again, still having that scope that if it needed to go just back to WAPL, that in the bylaw, it could do that if we need to continue an intermunicipal agreement continue to work, which gives us larger coverage for animal control, then that would be allowed too. And I think that line saying town may from time to time employ, including animal control officers from neighboring town, kind of opens that intermunicipal that it is, but we've kind of changed the role. And I'm not sure how current we're going to be able to change this right now. And that just may be clarification of the questions before we really get into what changes do we want, are seeking to have it be more current.
Can we add like $10,000 fines to people whose dogs get
Oh, thanks,
Could we
so.
just add onto that line, the town may from time to time employ, including animal control officers from neighboring towns, or enter into intermunicipal agreement?
Well, you'd have to rewrite the sentence, because it's,
How does the police department act? as
well,
animal
the issue here, as I'm looking at this more closely, is
After hours thing.
that sentence there that talks about, that's when in the absence of an animal control officer, the police department will act and can coordinate with whoever they need to, including people from other towns. So this doesn't really give the select board the authority to appoint people from other towns. This says if there is no animal control officer and the police have to take that obligation on, they can use the help of whoever they can find from other towns who are professional animal control officers, right? So, yeah, that could use work. We don't need to change that. Maybe just the intro part, shall appoint an animal control officer, or shall appoint an animal control officer, or make, or enter into agreements related to an animal control officer with
That-
other,
right, that
with
makes
other,
more sense.
with other municipalities or agencies as necessary, right? Because maybe you somehow figure out there's a state person that could do it, I don't know. Doesn't have to just be municipalities.
So I think we still have to get a little bit more clarification of if we change something here, what is the impact to other areas?
Are you gonna go to Jim as a town officer?
Well,
I
well,
can put that as my action item to go to Jim as the town officer.
I agree, I'm not gonna pretend to know everything, but in the charter, it says they have the power to appoint persons. It doesn't say they have to, it doesn't say that there are conditions or there are no conditions, it just says they have the power to appoint those people. It doesn't say they
And-
have the obligation to appoint those people.
If we change this wording, they still would be appointing those people, they would be appointing
They would
the
still have the power.
circumstances under which
They
they,
would still have the power,
yeah,
but
so I don't think that does conflict, I agree.
I agree, but I think it's important for us to run that down, because I don't wanna buy a problem
Right.
by putting language in that's gonna be a problem on the other end. But I don't read that as a
This
conflict.
conflict, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that will be the action item. I don't really think we need to go into further discussion then until we kind of clarify that.
I have a question on the very last point.
Yep.
Do we have a commercial kennel facility within the town?
Commercial
Commercial?
facility?
There was
Do we have a kennel?
the kennel facility on West Street,
Lincoln Road. Oh.
but
No,
now
no,
that
that's
we're,
that's the impound. The
Commercial
animal control
kennel
officer's
facility.
facility.
I would say we don't have.
I'm just wondering, do we have a commercial kennel facility? Or is it just the animal control officer's facility?
Are you asking, Nancy, in the sense of, does that need to be expanded to
I'm
someplace
just
outside?
wondering, do we actually have one?
Oh, no, but I'm reading what you're saying and saying, if we don't have one, should we expand this to say we should authorize them to use a commercial kennel facility,
Elsewhere?
including not inside the town?
Yeah.
Like, as this says, within the town, or whatever the animal control officer,
Yeah, there
facility
should- There
is.
should maybe be a list of commercial kennel facilities in the area. I mean, is there one in Norwood, and is that?
I hate
what-
to put something like that in the bylaws though, because if it changes.
Sorry, never mind.
I think we could just,
You could do like local stuff, but like naming the Norwood one or the Mansfield one.
do we know what they do? Maybe that's a question we can find out. What do they do?
and this is the, what do they do? I don't know if that West Street location is used really
Yeah.
anymore. I think Norwood also has a facility as well, where if an animal needs to be impounded at the,
Well, so we have this intermunicipal agreement now, but let's go back 5 years ago. What did John do?
He brought him to West Street, and he left him there,
Okay,
and he went in once a day and fed
He
them.
just brought them all there.
okay.
He didn't bring them to his house or anything.
No,
No, okay.
he did.
But
Yes,
is that the animal control officer's facility?
yes.
yes,
Okay.
so there is a building.
There's
I don't
2
think it-
kennels in there.
I don't think it's utilized
We get the permanent building committee to look into that? See what-
That building's quite small, I'm not
What kind
sure
of
if its
work they
value
do?
is $5 million.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Nancy, I would say that we could, if we're gonna change this, we should give them the power to select a facility outside the town limits as well, if necessary. And I can't imagine this too often that this dog's getting put into the pound anyway,
I think
right?
in addition of just, or neighboring community.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like
An
Brad's
area
outside of the
commercial?
town.
How about area commercial kennel facility?
Wait, the other two towns that we're in the agreement with, it's Norwood and, is it Medfield that we're?
Just Norwood, it's just in Walpole and Norwood.
Norwood, because Norwood does have a pound of some sort.
I think so, would select a commercial kennel facility within or outside the town.
Yep.
Yeah,
Or use the animal control officer's facility.
Right.
Yep.
So we need more clarification of really what is current practice right now,
Yeah.
of what's going on. So I think the goal with these are the final three bylaws. We've kind of reviewed some of the changes, a few action items and questions to have, a little bit of editing. I think we need a secondary meeting, and then hopefully we'll have some answers, and by our third meeting, the hope, unless you feel that we need a fourth meeting, but hopefully we could have a second meeting with kind of the edits that we are talked about tonight. And by the second meeting, have a little bit more clarification of what's current, because by the third meeting, what happened last year is early August. Town council put forward their recommendations. We, as a committee, adopted the versions that included KP Law's recommendations. And we have to do a final vote on it prior to it then, before we present it to for the warrant, the articles, then FinCom, then Select Board and such.
So what's our outside date?
I think last year we presented,
Oh, when does the warrant close? Because we can always put a placeholder in.
right, and I think we voted we had to have it by the August Select Board meeting, which I don't think I have all those dates in my phone right now.
Well, you had to present to
Something I was
FinCom.
reading on all this. I
Was
think it was
FinCom
August
before Select Board?
22nd.
I have an August 25th. FinCom, September 7th. It looks like is when we met with FinCom.
With FinCom, but the Select Board would have closed and kind of did the final vote on the warrant, and that's what we had to have our vote and everything done before then.
To make the warrant.
So what's that date?
That's what I have, I don't have all the Select Board dates in my phone right
But
now.
it's like third week of August or so?
August.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think last year it was like the 23rd or something.
Yeah.
It was like-
well, would 2 weeks from now be enough time to,
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, like, how many more meetings can we squeeze into 4 weeks?
Right.
To 4 weeks from now, right? And still draft this stuff and do other,
That'd be
and
possible.
vacations
4 weeks
and
from now is
everything.
August.
I'm gone the first week of
It is,
August,
yeah.
I'm here the week of the 14th, but then I'm gone again.
So could we
most of the
put a
following.
placeholder for the 19th then?
That's a Saturday.
July 19th?
Oh, July 19th.
Sorry.
is that another Wednesday?
2 weeks,
Yes.
that's 2 weeks from
Yeah.
today.
Is the 26th any better? I hate to push it off too much.
I know.
Well, so
I'm fine
we're
on the
thinking we
19th.
need 2 more meetings or 1 more?
Two suggested edits, get the suggested edits to KP Law. And I mean, we could,
I think the next meeting could be pretty brief, because we would just need to review kind of the edits that we have, clean it up.
So
But
just,
within the next 2 weeks, we would need to reach out to permanent building to see if this, the direction that we were talking about tonight would be something that we should continue to pursue. Find out whether animal control, kind of more current practices, and what we're recommending tonight, if there's any issue where it's written different ways in other bylaws within. And then for town council, it was pretty minimal.
right, but, so I'm just trying to think, if today's the 5th?
The
So if
5th.
we meet in 2 weeks on the 19th and have maybe some feedback, but whether we have feedback or we don't, we'll have suggested new language in some of these bylaws, right? To talk about as a group. But then, if we have to send that to town council to get their sign off before we meet again to formally approve it, how much time do they need?
We tell them, we need it back by.
I think the earlier the better.
But it's also governed by whenever that select board meeting is,
Right.
right?
And I don't know if that is on the calendar.
I said, I'm gone the week of the 7th, but I'm back the week of the 14th. If we can meet the week of the 14th to finalize everything,
Can we meet the 2nd, or is that pushing it?
I am away the first week. Oh, wait. Oh. All right. Let's see. I think the select board meeting is the 15th, where select board is meeting, I believe, 8/1 and 8/15. I am away the week of the 5th, the week of kind of the 7th, that second week.
as of, okay.
'Cause it's my birthday.
So we need to be done by the 2nd. Or the week of the 2nd,
We need to have recommendations kind of back from town council
by the
by the
2nd,
2nd.
or the 3rd, I guess, whatever, but yeah. You can come here Friday night, like 7:30, you can just.
I'm usually around.
but
So
yeah.
I would say if we could pencil in the 19th and the 2nd,
So that's
For our
2 weeks,
next-
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and see if we can.
On both.
Yeah.
We need 5 members, 5 sworn-in members, and we're good.
And we can circulate drafts, correct?
I think Doug
We
will
can
send,
circulate drafts, we just can't talk about it.
no commenting on it. Okay, so I will go ahead and book,
As a group, we can
right,
comment on it.
July 19th as well as August 2nd. We'll put those tentative and try to book a space for those and get agendas, which will add voting in minutes to those agendas as well. All right,
Sounds good.
I think we are good. Anyone else have anything else they want to add for tonight?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Anybody like my idea for dogs?
All those in
See
favor
the-
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.